We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one courage, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died there, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one courage, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain. We ain't giving up. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up.
All right there. A pleasant good Saturday afternoon to everyone. Guyanese, good afternoon to you guys. All nationals watching here, good afternoon and welcome to Over to You. As usual, I am your host, Wayne Caesar. I hope everybody is having a pleasant Saturday afternoon. But here, the uphill battle continues. Okay, the fight continues. We continue to fight. All right. Listen, we're still dealing with a country that has, quite a bit of people living below the poverty line. So as long as this exists, this fight continues. We're still, in a country where we see an oppressive government in place, and our fight is to change that. Our fight is to change our country. And listen, I'm looking at the inflation rate, man. It continues to rise. The Guyanese people, they're just not getting a break here. They're not even getting a tax break. That's just to show you how oppressive this government is. The more I look at this government, the more I see, a transactional government rather than a people-centric government, a government that is really paying attention to its citizens. Hence the reason we are here and we are fighting back, because we're not liking, the posturing of our country and where our country is going. Today, I have a very, very important guest that's going to be joining me shortly, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Ganesh Maipur. But before we even get to Ganesh, teachers continue to struggle. Nurses continue to struggle. Because what? We're seeing rising inflation and rising cost of living, but we're not seeing equally a rise in salaries to be able to sustain Guyanese over the period of a month or fortnight or whatever it is that, people would be receiving their salaries. And it is shameful to see this happening in an oil producing nation. When under coalition government, people were able to live. When the coalition was in power, people were able to live much more comfortably, and albeit much more safer. You know, there is so much issues right now in Guyana. It's quite concerning. And let me welcome my guest for this afternoon, Mr. Ganesh Paul, Member of Parliament. Ganesh, welcome to over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Wayne, and good afternoon to your viewers. Thank you for having me. I don't promise you to be very lengthy because I do have a number of things on my agenda. But when I heard that you would like me to be on your program, I consider it a privilege, and to that extent, I'm here. So thank you for having me.
Well, Ganesh, it's a pleasure having you here. I was looking forward to having you here for some time now, but to finally have you, I am very, very, very happy. All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes. So I just want to first get your take on what you see on the ground in Guyana. Just a
Well,
general.
the conditions have not changed from what it was in 2020, August the 2nd to now. It remains one where the people are feeling the brunt of the People's Progressive Party, and they are basically at the point of total collapse in the sense of not being able to make ends meet, grappling with high cost of living. Crime rate is also something to pay keen attention to. Notwithstanding me not having the statistics, the fact that social media is so open, you see how it is that persons are being robbed, and then you take into account the accidents on the roadways and a whole host of other issues that are affecting the ordinary citizens of Guyana. You know, there are people in our country that are benefiting under the People's Progressive Party, but those people are not within the ordinary Guyanese bracket. They are basically friends and families of members of the People's Progressive Party, and they benefit in various means, whether it is through escape from facing the penalty for their actions, be it them knowing police friends and they have people who can call the police to get them off, or whether it is through the awarding of contracts, or whatever means. You have those people that are enjoying the benefits, but the majority, the ordinary hardworking Guyanese who wake up in the morning and have to get dressed and take their children to school and report for an 8 o'clock job, and then come off at 4:30, pick up their children, reach home back 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, and they have that routine. When you think that they're the ones that are supposed to perhaps get a good salary increase, perhaps be uplifted in one way or another, feel motivated that they're safer in their society and their community, feel as though they can have a stable electricity flow and they don't have to be bombarded by constant blackout, or the very little things that matter to make life comfortable for them. They don't have that. And that is the troubling situation in our country. And I will forever admire the 2015 to 2020 years of governance of this country, because David Granger and his team had a focus point on making the small man the real man. And you saw significant increases in terms of performance, positively that is, in the health sector during those years, the education sector, even the agriculture sector. And all the other sectors were showing a rise in performance, even the police force. You had a sense of, the police, I think, had a sense of pride knowing they're wearing that uniform, and crime was so low, and there was so much more to feel good about during those years in comparison to now. So the feel on the ground is not one of strength, it is not one of comfort, it is one of despair. But I always tell people that there has to be hope. We have to be hopeful. As long as we have breath, And as long as we have our faculties in order, then we have to ensure that we have hope. And hope is what will take us through, especially as we approach another regional and general elections. We have to be hopeful that the right thing will be done, the right action will be taken, and that is people will come out in their numbers and people will give that no confidence to the People's Progressive Party by way of voting and voting resoundingly against the People's Progressive Party and ensure that they equip genuine people who have an interest in their affairs to ensure that you do things that are going to uplift the ordinary citizens and make them the real beneficiaries of the wealth of Guyana, and not to focus on friends, families, and favorites. And that is one thing that we have to be very careful and knowledgeable of, that our tool, our power, our strength lies in that vote. You know, some people from Wakenham called me the other day, Wayne, and they said to me that they're having this problem and that problem. And I asked them, I said, why don't you go and raise these concerns with the People's Progressive Party? And they said to me that the People's Progressive Party is not prepared to listen to them because they are not within that ilk of being a friend, a family, or a favorite. And that's the sad reality of how the country is being governed. It is governed in a way that friends, families, and favorites benefit. And that's something that we have to guard against. And I appeal again. The only way we can guard against it is by the people standing up and speaking out and taking the bull by the horn.
Thank you, Ganesh. Great opening, well said. And you talk about those years under the coalition. That was the years that people lived freely. They let their children out freely. And it was like a free country. You feel like if there was a government in place that was governing for all Guyanese, it didn't matter, ethnicity, class, gender, everybody. And it's sad to see the situation that we're facing right now under this government. But Mr. Mike Paul, my next question to you would be, we see that there's a crisis at the border, and thus far, this installed government does not have a strategy or solution. Your take?
Well, let me make this very clear, because oftentimes people take what politicians say and interpret it their own way. So let me make this very clear. We have an international rule of law when it comes to refugees. So Venezuelans leaving their country and coming to Guyana seeking refuge and seeking betterment for themselves and their family, that is an internationally accepted principle. And I have no issues with our Venezuelan brothers and sisters finding it necessary to come to Guyana for betterment for themselves. What I have an issue with is that when you come to the country, you have to have a system in place to ensure that whoever is entering and want to seek refugee status, they must be properly documented, and we as a country, we must have that system in place that can properly document everybody who came across the border, and we must have a system where we can track and trace. So if we know a boat landed at Tushin or Iflot or Zealot with 70 Venezuelans, and they're here for under the guise of being refugees, we're supposed to have a system that documents all 70 of them, their names, their next to kin, their telephone number, email address, whatever information we can get, where they're coming from, which particular part of Venezuela are they coming from, which community or which village. We're supposed to have all of these things documented. Where they are going, if they have a place to go in Guyana, or if they're seeking a shelter. We're supposed to know all of these things. And not because you land at the shores of Guyana means you can roam Guyana at your free will. If you are leaving the shores of Venezuela and you have arrived in Guyana and you're going to a house in Zealot, any movement from that house we're supposed to be monitoring too. Now, don't get me wrong, Mr. Caesar, because we don't have the capacity to take off millions of Venezuelans. So as much as we respect the international treaty of allowing people from other countries to seek refuge in ours, we have to be mindful of the degree to which we go with that, because we don't want a situation where our country ends up with 5 million Venezuelans and we are a population of 750,000. So there are a lot of nitty-gritties and there are a lot of moving parts in this entire situation that surrounds the Venezuelans and surround the movement of refugees from Venezuela to Guyana. And we have to ensure that we have systems in place to currently deal with it. Our fear has to do with the People's Progressive Party trying to place these people in our society by incorporating them in such a way to make them believe that they are Guyanese. And we fear issuance of birth certificates to them and documentation that can basically get them on the voters list, and then they eventually participate in our elections, which will not be credible. So all of those are things that we are looking at. We have credible information to show that these are things that one has to be concerned about, and we have to be very mindful of what is happening with the Venezuelan refugees, and we have to take control. I read in the newspaper the other day, I think if it's not today, that I think 2 Venezuelans were found with weapons and ammunitions, and that's a scary thing, eh? And I'm sure that there are other things that we have to be very mindful and careful of. So it is a very much a chicken and an egg situation, Wayne. I am not in a ministry of government, more so the Foreign Affairs Ministry that has the technical staff. But I believe the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and by extension, the President, owes this nation explanations surrounding what is happening. They have not been forthcoming at the level of the National Assembly. They have not been engaging the opposition members of parliament. And there are so many questions that ought to be answered and so many clarifications that when one draws the conclusion that the government of Guyana, Irfan Ali and his cabal regime, are in cahoots with the nonsensical approach that is happening with our Venezuelan counterpart and the people who are seeking refugee status, one wonders if they know directly what is happening and if they know what dangers they are putting the Guyanese people through. And I cannot be blamed for drawing such a conclusion as a national leader in my country, because the people who are supposed to be providing the information to the nation are silent. The president is silent, the ministers are silent, and the National Assembly is not functioning. So when we draw these conclusions based on the limited data that we have at our disposal, It is forced to be concluded as factual because of the silence of the people who are supposed to be speaking.
Well said, Ganesh. And when I was speaking of crisis of at the border, I was talking about, yes, the influx of Venezuelans, but also I was meaning to, speak also on the posture of the Venezuelan army at the border. That is quite concerning, and I think that's an issue of national security. And I agree with you saying that, the Foreign Affairs Ministry and the government as a whole owe the Guyanese people quite a few explanations as to what's happening, you know, at the border. But Mr. Van Res Charles was recently chosen to be the ambassador of Guyana, right, to Venezuela. That has not been accepted as yet. What is your take on that?
Well, all I know from the media is that he was chosen by the Guyanese government, and if I am correct in terms of protocol, that will have to be accepted by Venezuela before he can begin to function as the ambassador. So until then, we will have to wait and see Venezuela's reaction to the choice that was made. Um, and that's all I can possibly say on it.
Yeah, well,
Whether whether politically that was the right decision of Van Charles or not, he will have to live with the consequences of his actions. I don't want to speculate or draw a conclusion on what he has done. I am very firm on the principle that people make their decisions of their own. I personally, if I have to make decisions, I make them in the best interest of myself. And because I am a national servant of the people, I make it within the interest of the people whom I'm supposed to be representing also. And if at any time I make a decision that is not in the best interests of the people whom I have to represent, then I will have to do the honorable thing and remove myself from the public sphere of representing their interests. When I am not here forever, there is a time and a season for everyone. And if this is my time and this is my season to be a representative of the people of my country, I'm going to do that. And when the time comes to call it a day, I will call it a day and pass the baton on to somebody else.
Ganesh, that's a great point that you just made there. That you do not hold the portfolio that you hold, and will not be holding that portfolio forever. you know. And I say this to all people, all the individuals out there who are holding these high level portfolio, that you're not going to hold it forever, but while you hold it, please be impactful, serve the people.
Wait, I made this point a couple of times before, and I'm not sure if it reached across your audience.
Mhm.
But I'm going to say it again. Permit me.
Yes, sure.
This ladder of success that every human being is climbing is good. And we all will climb higher and higher as days go by. Some people will climb so high that they will pass others on their way going up. But I firmly believe that you will fall. One way or another, you have to. And I have always said that you can either fall from retirement, because when you retire, you basically go back down the ladder and become that ordinary person. You can fall by death, or you can fall by your own choice of, well, not your own choice. You can fall by being fired because you are answerable to powers that be that are higher than you. And my position in life is that when you fall, as you come down, the people whom you have passed going up, they must be able to stretch their hands out and to ease that weight with which you fall. And that simply means that the type of person you are with power will define how you are treated by others when you don't have power. And you must always leave a print in the sand where someone can turn around and say, 50 years from now, if I'm still alive, that I know Mr. Mahipal. He helped me with this, or he helped me with that, or he did this for my family, or he stood up for me, or he stood up for some. And they must feel that sense of pride when they assist me in my old days. And that's the kind of things that I live by, you know. I don't operate as though I'm high-handed. And there are many other people that I know who have a similar way of handling situation. Today I called someone from an office and I told the person that I have something that is coming that I have to come there for. And the person said, no, don't come. Why don't you send your driver? Or why don't you send a friend? You don't have to come. I said, no, 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 no. I'm not going to operate like that. I want to come and I want to go through the process because I want to see what is it that the ordinary people go through and what is it that the ordinary people face. And that will give me a greater sense of appreciation of how I can represent them to fix the system if I see something wrong with the system. I don't believe in sitting down in any fancy place and say, but and talk about ordinary if you're not ordinary yourself. So there are fundamental difference and principles. And my religious conviction teaches me that service to man and service to mankind is service to God.
Excellent, Mr. Paul. Those are absolutely great values, to carry. And it's a pleasure, to be hearing this coming from you. We were just on the Venezuela matter. I just want to touch on that again. Um, when you look at the influx of Venezuelans coming into Guyana, and you said, it's an kind of like an international treaty, an international agreement that, these people are allowed up to a certain point. As you said, it's going to be measurable. You cannot take on millions of people if you have about 750,000 people that you can't even properly serve. I mean, and when I say that, I'm not speaking of the coalition. I'm speaking of this installed regime, because I thought that the coalition did an excellent job, serving the people of Guyana. But let's go back a bit and look at the time that those individuals from Haiti was just merely passing through Guyana, and the way they were treated. Can you make some comparative?
No, but you're correct. You're correct. The rule has to be uniform. You cannot have one set of rules for one set of people and then another set of rules for another set of people. It has to be an across the board uniformity in terms of how you deal with the people who are seeking refugee status and people who are seeking assistance. It cannot be one sided. The People's Progressive Party is very much guilty of treating the Haitian nationals differently from how the Venezuelans are treated or how the other nationals are treated. And it got to be called out. And I'm happy that you raised it. So it gives me the opportunity to say that I did take stock of the fact that the Haitian nationals were treated very unfairly and cruel as far as I'm concerned. And that's the sad reality that we live in a country where our government has one set of rules for one set of people and another set of rules for another set of people. And that is the very unfortunate situation. But when it all comes down to us changing that and being futuristic here requires me to say that changing it requires the people to stand up and stand tall against the barbarism. The people, the Guyanese people, they have to stand up. You and I can talk here all night. We can talk for hours. But if the Guyanese people are not going to sound their voices or stand tall on their feet and represent a just cause, then the government is going to continue to do what they have to do in their own best interests.
Uh,
And and
Ganesh, Ganesh,
uh-huh.
I want you to stick a pin right there, because I have a quick little follow up to that. You talk about the standing up of the people, right? I feel like if these people has been under the thumb of the PPPC for 23 years. They've kind of like been conditioned, man. And we've been calling on the MPs to step out and empower these people. Do you think that the people are empowered enough? Do you think that they're encouraged enough to actually come out and stand up? Because I feel like if us merely saying this, to them is not enough. They need that support on the ground. And Ganesh, I'm not going to stop at the MPs for the opposition. There is a central executive, and the central executive is also a part of the opposition. And I feel like if everyone should be out there on the ground, maybe you guys could choose a day of the week that you guys are just gonna just all go out and be on the ground across Guyana with all your officials, councillors included, mingling with the people, edifying them, preparing them, letting them know their rights. Ganesh, there's a lot of people sitting down in homes in Guyana, don't know their rights, don't know that they have the absolute power and that it is not the government that has the absolute power. They are responsible for electing and putting government in place. Government is in place to work first and foremost for its people. Though we see that we have a transactional installed government in place, no, that is not focusing on the people. Our intention is in 2025 to have a government that supports the people. Mr. Maipol, what do you have to say to that?
Well, when I was saying stand up and speak out and so on, my message was coming against the backdrop of them using their vote to send that message. Now, let's not bury our heads in the sand, Wayne. We know there are track records. There is a track record, that is what I should say, of protest actions and how the People's Progressive Party has successfully managed to infiltrate the protest actions of the opposition. And I made this point before, and I'm going to make it again. The majority of people who suffer at the hands of the People's Progressive Party are Afro-Guyanese. And you have now a significant number of Indo-Guyanese and Amerindian Guyanese that are also feeling the brunt of the People's Progressive Party's mismanagement and unconcerned nature towards Guyanese. If we are to call for a national protest, let's say we decide on the day to be at Coffee Square, and we say to our representatives in Region 6, bring 500 people down who are going to support this cause and let them come. Of that 500 from Region 6, I'm sure 450 will be Afro-Guyanese. We say to our Region 5, brother, bring 300. Region 2, we say bring 100. Region 4, we will get 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000. Region 10, same thing. Managing that amount of people is an uphill task in a protest, right? I am telling you, Wayne, that experience has taught us that all the PPP will do is send 5 Afro-Guyanese amongst all that crowd. 5 Afro-Guyanese they're going to pay to come there too. And those 5 are the ones that will create all the mischief. And then in their apparatus, the others who may be there are going to get hype. And then you might have a contribution of racist behavior. You may have some things that are so uncontrollable and so on. But mind you, that is not an excuse. That is not an excuse. I am going to circle back to whether I believe the people are empowered enough. And the answer is no. They are not empowered enough because, not because of the MPs or the councillors or the CEC, they're not empowered because empowerment comes from education. And unless you're educated, you will not be empowered. And one of the successful stories of the PPP is that they have managed to, and in their 23 years in government, they have managed to not educate this nation. That's one of their success stories. They can get kudos for that. They have managed to basically indoctrinate people. And you would recall the uphill battle of 2015 to get into office. You had to face a type of campaign like never before, where the likes of Jagdio and others were campaigning and saying things like, don't trust them. They're going to kick down your door. What are they going to do to your family? They're going to become all kind of nastiness they were saying. But let me tell you something, Wayne, and I hold this dear to me. The people of Guyana, they have 5 years of the coalition, that is 2015 to 2020, and it wasn't 5 easy years. They have 5 years of the coalition to compare with the 23 of the PPP and the now 3 that they're in. So let's assume they have their full 5, the PPP that is. The people of Guyana must be able to compare the 5 of the coalition with the 5 of the PPP. They must be able to take into account the fact that the coalition did not have oil money. The PPP has oil money. They must be able to take into account that the publicity that is afforded onto the PPP now the coalition did not have. And they must be able to measure whether the coalition was genuinely people-centered versus the PPP being friends, families, and favorite-centered. And without a doubt, Guyanese people will conclude that without oil, the coalition did more for them at the level of being ordinary citizens in comparison to the PPP. So you may want me to agitate the base, but the base has a fundamental responsibility in all of this. And that fundamental responsibility, my brother, lies in them using that vote, that tool, that power that is on their pen or their pencil in their hands to vote them out. Vote them out. That is the democratic way of unseating them, even though they're squatting in office, even though they have been there squatting or fraudulent votes. But we know the geopolitics that played its way into our country. We know the people who are responsible for putting them there. And I believe those very people will unseat them. Those very people will unseat them. But when I am very comfortable knowing to myself that I served in a government 2015 to 2020 at a lower end, and I served knowing full well that the government I was a part of had the people's interest genuinely at heart. And now I see a government that does not have the people's interest at heart. They made a big hullabaloo, a big fuss about APNU increasing their salary 50%. The same 50% increase they got, you know. They're sitting down right now on the millions of dollars. You ain't hear them saying they're going to pay back into the treasury. When they're in opposition, they were going to pay it back, though. They're now in government. And here the funny thing, that 50% that the coalition gave, which was not true, not everybody got 50%. It was a manner to bring the salary scale in a way where it represents the authority. So the ministers had the highest salary, the permanent secretary the second highest, followed by the staff as you go down the ladder. So what the coalition did was really set the record straight. We had the prime minister of this country and the attorney general was getting more money than the prime minister. That's the system that we inherited, eh? And you had permanent secretaries getting more money than senior ministers. So there was a regulation that was done basically. The PPP gave public servants a 7% increase in 2022 because I don't think 2021 there was any salary increase. Well, no, was it 2021? 2020 there was no salary increase or something like that. But that 7% went to them too. Then they gave a 8% the next year. That 8% went to them also. So they enjoyed that 50% that the coalition left as they claim, which took their salaries in the millions. And they're also having 15% so far for the time that they have been in office from 2020 to now. You see the hypocrisy? You see the duplicitous behavior of them? So when I am not bothered by these people and their gymnastics, their political gimmickry, what I will say to the people out there is that a time will come when you will have to speak through your pen and pencil via voting, and I hope you do what is right.
You know, Ganesh, as we come up on program time shortly, I don't wanna rush you off because I think I have about two more questions that I would like to ask you. Ganesh, you were one of those scrutineers, right? That scrutineered the recount process, right? And you would be well aware of all the anomalies that was founded in that recount. My question to you is, with the Venezuelans allowed to so freely come in to the country and with the PPPC registering them, because they would know those numbers just like you know them, Ganesh, right? They have access to those numbers just like you would have had access to them. And a lot of these Venezuelan migrants are settling in Region 4. There's a lot of them in Region 4. Do you think that that is going to change the whole ethnic, not just ethnic dynamic, but from a voting perspective dynamic of Region 4? Do you think it would be enough to impact? Because I know the coalition always wins Region 4. Your take.
When we are monitoring the situation at our end by way of paying attention to the voters list, I believe we have competent staff members that are focusing on what is transpiring at the electoral level. And we have a structure in place to keep our eyes open on it. We are worried that that is the direction. Yes, if I think there will be changes, I do believe that that will happen. But I think we need to allow the system to work its way. I don't want to be premature in making a pronouncement, but I am cognizant of the fact that difficulties may be afoot, mischief may be afoot. But I will say let's allow the technical people from our end, our party end, to do their job, draw their conclusion, give us their finding, and believe me, brother, this station 107.1 will be the first to hear what we find.
Well, that's good to know, Ganesh. That's good, and thank you for that, because I find that that is quite concerning, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And there's a certain vice president who just comes out and he speaks to GCOM, he speaks to everybody. He seems to have a hand in everything related to the country. And when he comes out and he speaks, he doesn't talk about ever, negotiating or speaking with the opposition. He just comes and he says what's going to happen. And I don't
That's a nasty fella. That's all I would say. He's a nasty fella. He plays the dirtiest of game, and his wicked, cantankerous, evil, and Tavakamite type behavior is one that we will not be even. I don't even have him in any regards as a valuable asset in any way, shape, or form. I think he's responsible for the division in this country. He's responsible for the current status we are in. He's responsible for half of the problems that we face as Guyanese, both internal and external. And his wicked, evil self will have to pay for those actions one way or another, whether it's in this life or the other, or whether he goes before the Supreme Lord to answer the questions. But the fact of the matter is that I think he's just evil.
Thank you, Ganesh. I support that statement 1,000,000%. You could not have been more accurate on that. Now, Ganesh, I have been looking at the posture of the PPPC and the way that they are treating some of their own supporters. And, especially, with what I would have seen occurred with the sugar workers where, they were protesting and they got arrested and these large fines,
No, well, I did say to you, Wayne, that these 3 years the PPP has been in office, majority of their people are turning against them.
Right.
We have a large
Yeah, my name is Jasmine Caldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my ex next to the cup. And what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data.
That woman came up to me, Wayne. She came up to me and told me that she wants to do this. I didn't ask her. We were on the island and she saw us and she came to us. There's another one in Region 1 that I went to. She came up to me. There are a number of other people I can point to, several of them in Berbice. Indo-Guyanese that are very uncomfortable with what the PPP is doing. So Wayne, I am not going to be troubled by their notorious behavior. I believe the Guyanese people will speak. I believe the Guyanese people will speak.
Ganesh, as a deacon and everything, I will be keeping Auntie Data and all those elderly people in Guyana in my prayers. You know why, Ganesh? I want God to keep their eyes open, bless them, give them health, that they can live to see change in Guyana, because there are so many of them that would have passed, and they would have passed in grief over the last 3 years to see that our country is an oil producing country, to see the inflation, to see how pensioners are allowed to live. It's a shame. It is just a crying shame to see what's going on in our country. So, Mr. Michael, it's a pleasure having you on the program this afternoon. I hope that it was very edifying to our listeners and viewers. But before you leave, I just want you to leave the Guyanese people with some words that would lift their confidence up and empower them. Your closing remarks, sir.
Thank you, Wayne. My closing remarks to the Guyanese people will be simple. Everything rises and falls based on leadership. And if you have the wrong set of people in office, the ill treatment, the mistreatment, or whichever one you want to use that we face is because of who's in there. I know that we didn't put them in there, because when you look at those findings of the recount, you would know that that is not what we wanted. But I say to you, the Guyanese people, the power lies in your hands. And you must join with me in ensuring at the next regional and general elections, we don't have the People's Progressive Party sitting in power. And with the return of the APNU AFC, we will continue from where we have left off. We will have more resources to spend wisely and to ensure that the ordinary man benefit from the resources, where the ordinary man and woman can be made the real man and woman of Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Honorable MP, Mr. Ganesh Paul. Dear people, you heard it. Ganesh have a lot in store for you guys. Thank you so much, Ganesh, for joining. Thank you very, very much. And look, I look forward to having you on back again very, very soon. Okay.
Thank you for having me, Wayne. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. There you have it. You heard everything directly from the horse's mouth. Mr. Ganesh Paul, Honorable MP. Now, tonight's program was brought to you courtesy of Linda's Restaurant and Bakery. Linda's is located at the corner of 54th Street, and it is located between 54th and 53rd Streets. You want to get your nice Caribbean Guyanese cuisine, your dinner, your snacks, your black pudding, your pylori patties, egg ball, cassava ball, white pudding. Stop by Linder's. Also, tonight's program is brought to you courtesy of Exquisite Hair Palace. You want a haircut? Ladies, you want to get your hair done, nails done? Please stop by Exquisite Hair Palace. And I just want to take this time also to say a pleasant good evening to Mr. Clive Fraser, who is the owner of Exquisite. Good evening, Clive. Anyone who have expertise in how to cut hair from the men's perspective and how to do hairdressing from a female's perspective, please, there are booths available. Please contact Mr. Fraser. And of course, this program is also brought to you courtesy of Benchap Consultancy and Immigration Services. You're looking to apply for your citizenship, file for asylum, or file for an adjustment in status, or even file for a loved one, a family member, please contact Benchap Consultancy, Law and Immigration at 917-714-1082. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. This is where I say good night to you, and do enjoy the rest of your weekend. For those of you who is out and is going to be going out tonight and you're going to be driving and traversing the highways and byways, again, I say to you, please drive carefully. I'm looking forward to seeing each and every one of you next week on Straight Up. So until then, please take care. I love Guyana and I love each and every one of you. Good evening, guys.
Oh, we will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Big mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one rice, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one cry.